Assalamualaikum guys, in this video we're going to start from question number 43 onwards till question number 53, and we're continuing the same chapter MCQs of coordination and control. Question 43. On a hot day, the cheeks of a light-skinned person may appear red in color. What is the cause of this? Now, reading the question carefully, you should identify that it's written on a hot day. So, whatever the temperature is outside, चाहे hot है या cold है, your body has to maintain the internal temperature by thermoregulation. And there are some mechanisms that your body does so that the internal temperature can be maintained. For example, the arterioles dilate, which in turn makes the blood flow more towards the capillaries which are already present near the skin surface. So remember, the capillaries do not move. The word move is wrong here. They're already present closer to the skin surface. So this cannot be our option. C says that the person has started to sweat. Now, sweating is also a mechanism to maintain your internal temperature, but remember, sweating does not have an effect on making your cheeks appear red in color. That is only possible when there is more blood flow. And similarly, D cannot be the right option as well because it says that the temperature receptors have ceased to function. That means they've stopped detecting. If they've stopped detecting, how will the responses be generated? And it will be a problem for the body because it cannot maintain internal temperature correctly. So A has to be the right option because when the arterioles dilate, that means they widen in their diameter and more blood flow can be there, and so the cheeks appear red in color. Next is our question number 44, but we've already solved this in our previous videos, so वहाँ से आप जाके देख सकते हैं. It is a repeated question. Moving on to question number 45. The diagram shows some skin structures here, and we have to identify which structures are activated when a person feels cold. So when the person feels cold, which structures would be activated? सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज़ यहाँ पे ये है कि आपको स्किन स्ट्रक्चर से फेमिलियर होना है. इट कैन आइदर कम अप इन योर P2 फॉर labeling or even in P1 such MCQs can come. So you should be familiar with all the structures in the skin. Here, 1 is your hair, the hair follicle. 2 is आपका hair erector muscle. 3 is blood vessel. 4 is the fat layer. And 5th is your sweat gland. Now, out of all these structures, which are going to be activated when the person feels cold? Is it option A, 1, 2, and 4? But 1 doesn't get activated. 2, yes, it contracts. And then the hair gets pulled up and it stands like this on the skin surface. And 4 is fat. Fat cannot be activated, it is just sitting like a deposit in your skin. B और D भी आपके options नहीं हो सकते. Why? Because it says fifth structure, which is our sweat gland. Or cold conditions में our sweat gland does not need to be get activated क्योंकि we do not need more sweat production. Our body is already feeling cold. So we cannot produce a mechanism that further makes the body cooled up because that is what sweating does. So the most appropriate option is your option C, which is 2 and 3. Your hair erector muscle and your blood vessels. Your blood vessels will go through vasoconstriction. They will be constricted so there's less blood flow. Question 46. In which situation would the amount of insulin secreted into a person's blood be highest? When is insulin secreted? It is secreted when a person's blood glucose level is high, and to bring it back to normal, insulin gets secreted. So, is there high production of insulin during a game of football? No. Why? Because when you're exercising or playing a game, you're already utilizing the stored glycogen, which is glucose basically stored into glycogen during the time when insulin is being secreted into the bloodstream so that your blood glucose level can reduce. So you're already utilizing the glucose and the blood glucose level would decrease. Having a meal of rice is the right option. We'll come towards it at the end. Waking up in the early morning, When you wake up early in the morning, you're already feeling low in energy. And after you have your breakfast, you get that energy, and after having your breakfast, after some time, then your insulin production is high. Working outside on a cold day, when you're already working, you're utilizing the glucose, so there is no need for insulin production. Having a meal of rice is the right option. Why? Because rice is rich in starch, and starch is a very big molecule. It cannot be digested like that. So when by the action of enzyme it is broken down into its small units like glucose, तो वो आपकी blood stream में आ जाते हैं, and then that raises your blood glucose level. So to reduce that, insulin is secreted. Question number 47. Which of these statements describe control by negative feedback? Now, to understand these statements and interpret whether they are controlled by negative feedback or positive feedback or neither of them, you should first know the definition of negative feedback. Negative feedback is a regulatory mechanism where the body works to counteract or reverse a change. This part is very important in a certain, physiological parameter. So let's take an example. जैसे आप सुबह में उठे हैं and you haven't had your breakfast, so your blood glucose level is normal at that time. As soon as you had your breakfast, your blood glucose level would rise. Now, to bring it back to normal, your body would produce insulin, and again, your blood glucose level would be normal. Now, let's say you haven't eaten for quite a few hours, your blood glucose level would decrease. And then again, to make it back to normal, there would be either no production of insulin. So the thing is that these constant lines are basically the result of the negative feedback because our body is counteracting that, reversing that change. So keeping this in mind, let's move on to the statements and find out. Option A. An injury to body tissue activates platelets in the blood, and these activated platelets release chemicals which activate more platelets. Now, even if you did not understand these statements, one thing that you can literally grasp from this statement by just reading is that an injury stimulated the activation of platelets. Those platelets activated the release of a chemical, and that in turn released more platelets. So, all we can see is that something is increasing something, it is amplifying that change. So, remember, whenever a change is not counteracted and instead it is increased and harming the body, that is positive feedback. So this cannot be our answer because we have to find out the statements that is best described in terms of negative feedback. Option B. During the menstrual cycle, luteinizing hormone stimulates the release of estrogen, which in turn stimulates the release of more LH. Now again, more, the same word. So again, we can grasp that idea that again, this is positive feedback because LH hormone was stimulated, then estrogen was stimulated by it, and in turn, again, estrogen stimulated LH. So there's more things happening instead of counteraction that we can see. C says that a higher concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere increases temperature, which increases photosynthesis, producing more carbon dioxide. Now, this is not a scenario that is either related to positive or negative feedback. So, this is something that has to be ignored, just like all the other options. Coming to D, when blood pressure is high, nerve impulses from the brain cause the blood vessels to dilate and the blood pressure is reduced. Now, if you read the statement, you can get the idea that your body is counteracting a change, which was your blood pressure was high. So, to counteract that, the impulses were sent from the brain and the blood vessels were made to dilate, so the blood pressure is reduced. So, you can see something, a change is happening to reverse the condition. So, D has to be the best option here. Question number 48. Which statements describe the pupil reflex in bright light? Now, here's a picture attached which would help you visualize and understand better. So, in bright light, the first thing you need to know and first thing you can see in this image is that your pupil has been constricted. So, it is option 7, and we can see that only in option C 7 हमें मार्क होता हुआ नजर आता है. So even if a student knew this much, he would have scored 1 mark for this MCQ. But you should know what happens to the iris muscles as well. So the circular muscles present in the iris would contract. So that means option 3 and option 7 have been ticked. The radial muscles would relax because while in pupil dilation they contract, so in pupil contraction they would relax. And that is option number 10, which means all the numbers were correct in option C. Question 49. Which chemical produced by the body alters the activity of a target organ and is destroyed by the liver? So, bile, enzyme, and saliva, they are not destroyed by your body or by any organ, they are just produced. So, यहाँ से आप idea लगा सकते हैं that hormone is the answer. Also, because all hormones are destroyed by the liver, and hormones also alter the activity of a target organ. For example, if we are talking about insulin और glycogen, तो ये सारे जितने भी hormones होते हैं वो activity को affect करते हैं of a target organ. Question number 50. The diagram shows a section through the human brain. Which labeled part contains the temperature regulation center? In our brain, the temperature regulation center is the hypothalamus, which is above your pituitary gland. So this is your pituitary gland, and A is hypothalamus, which is above that. This is your spinal cord, this was pituitary gland. So, like that, you have to label each part of the human brain, and your temperature regulation center is always your hypothalamus. Question number 51. Where are receptors found? Now, here's a very easy trick to remember that. You know that how a reflex arc goes. It is that our receptors detect any stimulus, and by sensory neurons, that impulse goes to your spinal cord or to your brain, and then by relay neuron, which is the connecting neuron of the motor neuron and the sensory neuron, the impulse reaches the effector organ. But to remember, there's a very easy shortcut, that is, you know that where does the impulses go from the receptors? Where's the first place they go? They go through the sensory neuron. So you have to remember that they're present at one end of the sensory neurons, and from there the impulses travel. It can't be motor neurons or all neurons or relay neurons. Question number 52. Which organs in humans are involved in maintaining body temperature? So it is your brain and skin both that are involved in maintaining your body temperature. Brain has the control center, and skin gets the impulses, or it is the effector organ which would then carry out certain mechanisms. For example, blood vessels in your skin or sweat glands in your skin, they would either start producing more sweat, or either they would go through vasoconstriction or vasodilation according to the temperature. So it has to be both of them. Question 53. The diagram shows a section through the eye. When the person looks down and focuses on their mobile phone, what is the state of the structures P and R? So this is a question about accommodation reflex, and the person is looking at a nearby object. So what would happen to the structures P and R? P is your ciliary muscle and R is your suspensory ligaments. So would they contract or loosen up, or would they slacken? Remember, all these terms are the same. The examiner can ask you in different ways. What happens when you focus on a nearby object? Your ciliary muscle contracts. That means our P structure would be contracting. So it is either A or B. And the suspensory ligaments get slackened or relaxed. These, they are loosened up or slackened. So it means A is the right option. And you can see that your lens is bulged out, or it is more towards the outside. It is convex basically, which means thick. So that's it. That was for today's video. We covered from question number 43 till question number 53. From next video onwards, we'll be covering from question number 54. So make sure that you have watched all our previous videos so that you can basically get an understanding of this chapter. and make sure to attempt topical past papers at least 2 to 3 times before your exam so you have strengthened your concept and you're good to go. You can also share this playlist with your friends so that they can ace their exams too and also strengthen their concepts. And lastly, before ending the video, a very important thing is that you should start praying 5 times a day, and also you should start making dua for yourself and for us as well. And always remember one thing, that hard work is in your hands, but granting success is in Allah's hands. So make sure you give your 100% efforts for your exams, because the one who has done efforts will surely see it being paid off as well. So that's it. That was the end of the video.